We're down in the studio this week because we're going to look at how to do a basic white cutout lighting setup. The white cutout is a basic setup that everybody should know how to do. It's commonly used in a lot of commercial photography for simple objects. It's used in portraiture, think Richard Avedon and his American West series. And it's any time that we surround an object with a background of pure white. This allows us to cut the background away so that we can place the object in other things with ease. Now, it may sound like just a simple thing of putting your object in front of a white background, but it's a little bit more in-depth than that. And it's something that every photographer should know how to do because you never know when you might want to use it for something. Now, I am photographing some of my camera collection to make graphics for t-shirts and things like that help support this channel. But you can also use it for portraiture, like I said, with Richard Avedon and other things. So let me show you what the basics are, and then you can go out there and do it yourself for whatever you might need to do. For a white cutout sort of shoot, you want to first start with your white background. So I've got a piece of seamless. This is not the large, this is the 54-inch wide seamless, so it's certainly not huge, but it is going to work for what we need. Now, typically when you're going to photograph something, you need to make sure that the subject is far enough in front of your background that the light that's falling on your subject isn't affecting the background. In this case, I don't have enough room in this room to do that. So my main light, which I'm going to bring in just a moment, is going to light the background a little bit. So let's bring that light in and see how much it's affecting the background and if we need to add something else. Now when it comes to lights, you can use whatever kind that you like. I'm going to be using studio strobes because that's what I have and it's easiest for me to use. But you can also use speed lights, you can use hot lights, you can use LEDs like what my video lights are. Any of those will work as long as you can control the shape and brightness. So let me bring in the first light and we'll photograph this. First things first, I want to make sure that it's lighting the camera. So we're going to go ahead and do a quick light meter from the subject position. Get around all my stuff here. All right, let's see what that does. Okay, while that may be technically correct, I feel like we might want to take that up a notch because it's such a black object that I really kind of want to light it a little bit more. So let's take it back up and see what we get here. Yeah, that's a little bit better lit for what I want. And we can see the background is actually almost white. It's not exactly white, but it's pretty close. But I can also see that it is kind of a gradient from left to right. And that's because this part of the softbox is closer to the background than this part, and therefore it's lighting this side more than that side. But in order to get a nice clean white light, we're going to add a second light. So let me go ahead and set up a second light and see what we come up with. Okay, so checking this, my camera is set at f11. The second light comes out at f16, so it's a stop brighter than the camera. So let's see if that works. I can always go up, but it is on its lowest power, so I can't go down unless I move the light away, which we may do if we need to. So let's take a shot and see where we end up. Okay, so I can see that the light is, the background is more white. We do have a nice cutout now for that. However, looking at my monitor, I've got some new things popping up. We have a highlight rim around the inner part of the lens that we didn't have before. We also have some flare on the top part of the waist level finder that wasn't there before. So I'm going to go ahead and put a reflector on the light and see if we can cut out the flare from the background light that we just added, to see if that helps keep the straight light from touching the camera, and we have light only on the background. So let me grab a reflector and we'll add that. All right, reflector's in place. So let's see what we get now. Yeah, so we can see here that it did help a little bit. The glare on the lens is still there a little bit. I don't mind that so much, but I don't necessarily want it on the waist level finder. So let's add a flag. You can use just a piece of card, foam core, something like that. I'm going to use a barn door attachment onto the reflector. So let's add that. Okay, barn door's attached, and what I've done is I've swung the blade to the left far enough that it just provided shade onto the camera, but it's still allowing illumination to hit the paper. And then the top and bottom are opened up, and the right side is open so that it doesn't allow stray light to hit the wall, but the paper itself. So let's check that out. So here we go. We've got a nice bright white background now, minimal flare. However, looking at the previous photo, we have the flare eliminated, but we still have a nice bright white background. But I actually kind of like the flare, the light hitting the inside rim of that lens. It kind of makes the lens pop out a little bit. But I still want to shade the waist level finder. So we're going to rotate our barn doors. So I'm going to turn it. The small blade, what I want to do is move it until okay. So there it's blocking the light here. But I want to keep there. So I still have all the light on the lens, but I don't have any along here. If I rotate it more, I can block it from the lens. I don't want to do that. Just the waist level finder. There. Okay, let's take a shot. Let me get out of the way. All right, there we go. We've got the waist level finder flagged so that it's not picking up the extra light, but we still have the rim of light inside of the lens. And I like seeing that. It makes it come out just a little bit more. So overall, I think this is going to work for me. I've got a nice clean white cutout. The background is lit one stop above what the camera setting is at. The camera, your subject can be lit however you want it to be, but it does need to be exposed correctly. If you're on film, you're going to need to meter that and then make sure your background is at least one stop over. So if you're doing like a product or commercial work like this, digital, of course, is very easy. It lets you go straight to the computer and you can check things out. You can just kind of balance things as you want. Portraiture, like Richard Avedon, he just went out, put the piece of paper against a wall in the shade, and then had the subject also in the shade about 6-7 feet in front of the paper, and they were lit exactly the same. And then he just developed, or had the film developed, just a weensy bit higher contrast so that the paper came out pure white. So you can do this with film in one shot without lights. I'm in the studio. I don't have that kind of lighting available to me. So since I had to light the subject, I had to light the paper as well. if you're doing it out in the shade, nice open shade should do the trick for you. So that's about it. Let's go ahead and look at how easily this cuts out in Photoshop. So let's move over to the computer and check that out. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. Let's select the background with our magic wand and see what we get. Ooh, that looks nice and clean. We do have the paper at the bottom, which we'll zoom in here. I'm going to do this part manually. So we can see there is some little bits that didn't get caught that weren't quite lit up the same, but that's because they're under the camera and they have a shadow on them from the camera. If I had used a fresh piece of paper instead of one from earlier in the day, I might have been able to cut that out too, but I didn't. Let's back out. Let's select the inverse. Let's copy that layer, and there we go. Nice, clean cutout. And that's the basic white cutout. It's one of the easiest things you can do, and it's really a staple of lighting. If there's nothing else you know about studio lighting, it should be how to do at least just a white cutout type light. You can do it for floral arrangements, portraits, objects like this, film, digital, doesn't matter. It's just a matter of getting your light the correct balance between background and foreground. Now, I will say I'm in a cramped space, so I'm using only 2 lights. This light, which is lighting the subject, is also lighting the background quite a bit. If I had more space, if I were doing a portrait and I had the person in front of a larger background, I would pull the person away from the background. I would light them separately and then have 2 lights on either side of the paper to lighten the paper itself and make that one stop above camera exposure. That would ensure a white cutout that without excessive flare, because if you just raise the exposure on the background too high, you'll simply backlight the person, and you don't want that. You want nice clean edges around shoulders, head, objects, and so forth. And so you want to keep the flare to a minimum. So one stop at least above camera exposure. I probably wouldn't go over 2 stops above camera exposure for the background. So here I can get away with just 2 lights, one on the camera or on the subject, and then one on the background, because this is doing so much work being this close to the background. But in a roomier situation, I would light the background separately than the subject light. So that is the white cutout. Try it for yourself, learn it, know it well, and you can do a lot with it. So until next time, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you then.